Great. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is John with Murder by the Book, coming to you from my living room for another live virtual event. I'm so excited today. We had this one scheduled in the bookstore, and I'm so sad that we're not actually able to do this in person, but we're really thrilled that we are able to do it virtually with, we've got Hannah Dennison and Miranda James here with us. And just in case you were not familiar with them, Miranda James is the New York Times bestselling author of The Cat in the Stacks mysteries, including Careless Whiskers, The Pawful Truth, and Six Cats a Slaying, as well as the Southern Ladies mysteries, including Fixing to Die, Digging Up the Dirt, and Dead with the Wind. Miranda lives in Mississippi, and just in case you were not familiar with Miranda, yes, Miranda is a gentleman. We will get to that in just a little bit. And Hannah Dennison was born and raised in Hampshire, but spent more than 2 decades living in California. She has been an obituary reporter, antique dealer, private jet flight attendant, and Hollywood story analyst. For years, Hannah taught mystery writing workshops at UCLA Extension Writers Program in Los Angeles. In addition to the Island Sisters series, she writes the Honeychurch Hall Mysteries and the Vicky Hill Mysteries, both set in the wilds of Devonshire, the Devonshire countryside, where she now lives with her 2 high-spirited Hungarian Vizslas. Is that correct?
Yes, you can say Vizslas. Yeah, Vizslas is good.
So how are y'all doing this afternoon or this evening for you, Hannah?
Good. Yeah, I'm excited about this. This is of course I'd much rather be in the store, which was the plan, but this is great that it's worked like this. It's good.
It's doing fine. Like Hannah, I would rather be there so I could give Hannah a hug. I haven't seen her in ages.
I know, yeah.
It's so nice to see her. And you,
yeah, I'm so happy that I got to spend some time with Hannah in October when we were at BoucherCon and have some drinks. So if you guys are watching live on Facebook, if you have questions for either author, you can drop those in the comments. I will be monitoring those and getting to them. Real briefly, wanted to mention we will have signed copies of Dean's book, Cat Me If You Can. We have them, he has dropped them off at the UPS store for us yesterday and they're on the way. His book technically comes out next Tuesday. So if you don't want to wait for a signed copy, we've got unsigned copies at the store waiting for you Tuesday morning. And we definitely have copies of Death at High Tide, Hannah's new one, in the store as well. So to get us started, let's start with Hannah. Can you tell us a little bit about the new book?
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about it, in fact. And basically the thumbnail short version is it's about 2 sisters who inherit a Art Deco hotel on a remote island in the Isles of Scilly. And I don't know if many people are familiar with the Isles of Scilly. You're supposed to call it the Isles of Scilly or Scilly, not the Scilly Isles for some reason. It's spelled S-C-I-L-L-Y, as in Scilly. I have a sister, and believe it or not, it's not based on our relationship at all. It's based on sibling rivalry. I have to kind of say that actually, because I don't want her to know which sister she is. But yeah, so it's set a sort of mashup of Tresco, if anyone's been to the Scilly Isles, which is a little island like 2 miles by 1 mile long and wide, and also Burr Island, which is in the South Devon coast, which is where they filmed And Then There Were None, the PBS version of the Agatha Christie. It's called Burr Island. They called it Soldier Island there for that. So I sort of like made a mashup of the 2 places, and I've created this Tregarrick Rock hotel. So that's basically it. And of course, you know, they get there, and there's a very small cast of characters. So it's been described as a locked room mystery, which was something I actually hadn't bargained on when I started writing it. I hadn't actually deliberately thought I'm going to write a locked room mystery. But then I realized I'd written myself into a corner a lot because there were only like 6 or 7 characters on there. So really that it's about them. Evie, the main character, her husband's just died, and her sister, who's 40, Evie's like 36, she's just getting divorced, and she's actually a Hollywood film producer, even though they're both British. So I sort of drawn a bit on my Hollywood experiences there to put a little bit of that in the book. And so, yeah, so they haven't really seen each other for about 10 years. So there's also that whole rediscovery of your relationship with a sibling. So that's the short version. And there's a cat.
And so, Dean, do you want to tell us about Cat Me If You Can?
Well, it's the lucky 13th book in the series. I never thought I'd go this far. And currently there'll be at least 4 more, thank goodness. And I'm working on number 14. But in this, I thought it was time for Charlie to leave Athena. I mean, the body count in Athena has gotten pretty heavy. And last summer, I went to Asheville, North Carolina to see Biltmore. I thought, well, why not? Why can't Charlie and Helen Louise and Diesel go to Asheville, North Carolina? And I didn't really want to murder anybody at Biltmore because the Vanderbilt family might not be happy with that. They still own it. And it's the largest private residence in the United States. It's humongous. And I decided, well, we're going to take some of Athena with us. And I came up with the idea of having a recently formed mystery discussion group from the Athena Public Library go to a boutique hotel in Asheville to have a little mystery week where they would talk about their favorite writers and have fun like that. And I brought in the Ducote sisters from the Southern Sisters series. I love Miss Angel and Miss Dixie, and Miss Angel tends to take things over. And since I'm not writing those books anymore, it's kind of fun to have them around because readers miss them. So I brought them all, well, plus a number of new characters for this. And it's almost like, it's not really a locked room mystery, Hannah, like yours, but it's like that old, the old British country house mysteries where everything takes place, pretty much, all the action takes place in this one hotel. Although the people,
so kind of more of a closed cast than a locked room.
Well, exactly. Yeah, there is a tour of Biltmore. And don't tell the tax man that I included that for IRS purposes.
You have to.
Yes, have to. But I came up with the boutique hotel, and I dropped a few names here and there. I always love doing that, using real people's names, so they get a kick out of it. But that's what happens, and of course, Charlie doesn't find the body, but of course he immediately gets involved, and Miss Angel, of course, wants to run things. So I had a lot of fun with it.
So one of the things I love when we pair up authors, because we paired the two of you up just because I love both of you and it would just be a fun event. But it's always funny to me to realize how much books have in common. I was talking to you guys a little bit this before we started, and Hannah just mentioned another one. So you got both books feature cats. Both books kind of mention classic mystery writers. They both have small cast, and they're both set at these kind of small hotels, which I hadn't thought about until you mentioned it. So to get started with what they have in common, since they both feature cats, were either of y'all's cats in the books based on real cats?
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Absolutely. Mr. Tig, for those who know me well, will know that when he passed away when he was 17, I was totally devastated. And I haven't actually been able to find another cat since. So I have these dogs at the moment. So, well, of course, I will keep the dogs. I'm not going to give them away for the cats. But yeah, so my cat, Mr. Tig, was a bit of a legend in a way. And I just thought a good idea would be to have a cat in my series. And so he's sort of immortalized on paper. And one thing, and I know people will think I'm crazy, but I actually did have a pet psychic at one time. And so he told me a lot of the things that Mr. Tig was, what because apparently cats always complain, whereas dogs very much live in the moment. And so a lot of the sort of tips and things that he told me that went through Mr. Tig's head, I've kind of incorporated a little bit. I mean, he's not a talking cat. He's more, I have a vicar. His name's Vicar Bill. He's like a bit of a crazy old seafaring man of the cloth, and he's able to communicate with the cat. So it's sort of like I cheat a little bit. So that's Mr. Tig for you. Yeah, so he's immortalized on paper now, and I'm very excited. And he does look a bit like that actually, because I have a photograph which is here. I should just show you. This is Mr. Tig. Not sure if
Tuxedo.
Yeah, so slightly. So I think they got that right.
Yeah, and so
artist.
you guys can see the cover. So there's Mr. Tig.
Yeah, so there's Mr. Tig.
So, yeah,
so there we go. Yeah. So So he doesn't really solve anything, but he definitely provides a little bit of light entertainment, and things like that. Yeah. So
I think that's an important aspect of this kind of book, and the fact that our characters are pet owners and love animals.
yeah,
I think
exactly.
that tells readers something about the characters.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
so many people have pets and they identify with people who have pets and so on. Diesel, the cat in my books, the Maine Coon, is actually based on a real Maine Coon who was named the Diesel. He belonged to the late Barbara Mertz, who was Elizabeth Peters and
I didn't know that.
Barbara Michaels. And a friend and I, Beth Foxwell and I, were visiting Barbara once and sitting there talking. Barbara always had several cats and dogs wandering around. And we looked over and this humongous thing came walking into the room that looked like a bobcat. And Barbara said, "Oh, that's just the Diesel." And he weighed about 40 pounds.
That's a really big cat.
He was probably the biggest Maine Coon ever born, I think. But, Barbara didn't bother with getting him in the Guinness Book of Records. Well, he took a shine to Beth and got up in her lap and wouldn't move. And so he was quite a character. He was named for the Washington Skins running back. I think he was named John Norris or somebody like that, who was known as the Diesel on the field. Barbara was a fierce football fan. But when I started writing the first book and I knew that I was going to have a cat, for some reason, Diesel the Maine Coon immediately popped into my head. And so that's how Diesel came to be. Years later, Barbara sort of teased me that she was going to sue me for stealing her cat. And so it was a little private joke between the two of us. But of course, by that time, the Diesel was gone. But anyway, he's kind of a tribute to her because she's one of my all-time favorite writers and people. So
that's nice.
She's one of my favorites too. Actually, one of my for everyone watch one of my prized possessions. One of the last times Dean got to see Elizabeth Peters, he got a signed book for my husband Matt and I, which is one of my prized, treasured signed book possessions. So, and they both have the Tig and Diesel both have their own social media accounts too, don't they?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed because I only just started mine, and in my book, I actually said that he has 1,000 or 2,000 followers. I think I have 19, so I have a lot of work to do on my social media account. But I am going to do it. I just suddenly decided that would be a good idea. So I'm embarrassed. So,
so that means if you guys are watching, you need to go follow Mr.
Please.
Tig. What's his Instagram?
Follow Mr. Tig. It's Mr. Tig Hotel Cat. So I think it's lower underscore Mr. Tig lower underscore hotel. How many do I have now? 19, right?
You have 23 followers.
23.
So if you guys are on the Facebook chat, I am dropping the link to Mr. Tig's Instagram in there. Everybody go do what you're supposed to and go follow him so we can get him some more followers.
Yes, he needs some confidence. He needs the confidence to know that he's putting this effort into it and he's getting results. Thank you, John.
Well, I don't do Instagram so far, but Diesel does have his own Facebook page.
He does, I know.
Yes. So, and he's got a fair number of followers, I think.
Oh.
And there's one of mine.
So somebody in the comments asked if y'all have pets. Hannah, you mentioned that you have 2 dogs.
I have 2 Vizslas, yes. And they're very sweet. They're a handful. They're 5 years old now. But they're both sleeping right now. But if this had been during the daytime, then I would be playing with the squeaky toy and not being able to chat on this live sort of screening thing. So yes, at the moment I have 2 dogs, but I will get cats again actually, because I do quite miss cats, and they love cats, so that's good. Yeah.
Well, they're Hungarian hunting dogs, aren't they?
Yes, they love squirrels. Oh, I've got to be really quiet. They love squirrels because if I say that, they really do kind of hear it.
They might perk up.
Yeah. They're very sweet. They're very snuggly. They like to sleep. They call them Velcro dogs because they like to be always touching you. Yeah.
Well, I have 4 cats: Toad,
Cool.
Pippa, Ernie, and Bert. And Pippa is my calico, and she's sometimes a Velcro cat because she's neurotically attached to me.
Yeah.
Lying on the floor here, being adorable, so I will notice her. And Toby's sitting in the window, and Ernie's over in the other chair napping. I'm not sure where Bert is, but Ernie and Bert are tuxedos like Mr. Tig.
Yeah, I love having pets. They're such great company, and they also, having dogs gets me out, and so I can walk a lot, which is really important, actually.
Yeah.
My two have completely disappeared. They were running around earlier, and I was telling them if there was going to be an event where they needed to make an appearance, it would be this one, because usually you can see Calvin's tail just kind of.
I did, yeah, we did definitely saw Calvin. Very handsome cat.
So another thing that you guys have in common in the books is discussing classic mystery writers. Hannah, in yours, all of the rooms in the hotel are all named after classic mystery writers like Marjorie Allingham and Agatha Christie. And then Dean, in yours, your characters are discussing kind of their favorite Golden Age mysteries at the first meeting of their group. So can you guys talk a little bit about, like, you know, why you decided to include the authors that you did, and were there other ones that you wanted to that you weren't able to fit in? Let's start with you this time, Dean.
Sure. You know, I'm a huge fan of Golden Age detective fiction, and I have a very large collection of all the classic writers plus many obscure ones, and Marjorie Allingham being my all-time favorite. And a lot of readers in the mystery community these days just don't know these people. They know Agatha Christie, of course, because of David Suchet, and they know Miss Marple because of the endless versions, trying to, you know, Joan Hickson was the definitive Miss Marple, I'm sorry.
Mm.
But you know, there's so many other wonderful writers they don't know about. I mean, Patricia Wentworth, the creator of Miss Maud Silver, who is like the ultimate cozy writer. I mean, it's like wrapping yourself in a blanket and sipping tea and eating crumpets is, you know, reading Miss Silver. And, you know, it's my chance to just get the word out about some of these people. There's a very active Golden Age detective story group on Facebook. And I thought I knew a lot about Golden Age, but there are people on there whose encyclopedic knowledge is just amazing. But you know, I love to read and I love to share. It's one of the reasons I loved working at the store for so many years, is just the joy of sharing something you really love with somebody else who might, you know, discover it and like it too. So every book, Charlie's always reading something, and I use it, what Charlie's reading, as a way to give people a nod towards, you know, towards the writers that I love. And a Marjorie Allingham room in your hotel.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead. So I remember definitely Marjorie Allingham and Agatha Christie. So why did you decide that you wanted to include those?
Well, there's a couple of things that's happened since that, actually. Well, yeah.
He's made his appearance.
Well, first of all, because I now live in Devon, my mum, you know, even though she's 90, she is a docent at Greenway, which was Agatha Christie's summer house, which is about 9 miles from where I live. So even though I know with COVID, of course, it's closed, the house is closed now, but every time I would go there, mum's a real like aficionado on everything that Agatha Christie has to say. So if I was complaining about my book, she would always be saying, well, Agatha says this and Agatha says that. So Agatha obviously was one of the actual writers that I wanted to choose, but at the same time, there's this amazing e-zine. I think it's called Mystery People. I always get confused. Mystery People and Mystery People, and they always have a Golden Age writer that they do a huge expose on every month. And so I got a lot of my ideas from there, because some of these people I've never heard of. One of them, and of course, you know, I'm sure that actually Dean might be the same, but because I've just finished my second book in that series, I can't actually remember what I've written in the first book. So
Yes.
There's this writer called, I know, I can't, it's awfully embarrassing. So George Goodchild, I came across his work not so long ago. So he's one of my rooms and writers that I talk about in the second book. And this, which was terribly exciting, I met his daughter, who was 105. She just passed away, actually. And so George Goodchild was someone I'd never heard of before. He'd written over 200 books. and which is extraordinary. But because there's no social media back then, no one's heard of him. And they have given me her daughter, who's older than me, have loaned me George Goodchild's Olympia typewriter, which I have in my office. And so I keep hoping he's going to channel his writing into me. So I've become really interested in a lot of these golden age writers that I haven't heard of before. So
yeah, it's been really nice the last couple of years to see that people like Poison Pen Press have their line of the British crime classics, and so a lot of the stuff that like I had never even heard of when I started working at the bookstore is available now. And as every time there's a new one of those golden age classics that comes out reprinted, we just have people that just want one of every one of them, so you can kind of discover.
Amazing. And I find too that what I'm in awe about with the golden age writers is that they didn't have the luxury of the delete button, and cut and copy and paste and rearranging all your chapters and words. Everything was on a typewriter. And I'm interested about how that kind of flow of writing was so different to how I write now, which is full of stops and starts. But I wonder if I didn't have that luxury and I just had that one piece of, carbon paper and a, whiteout, I wonder how differently I'd write. I don't know. It's just a thought.
So generally with cozy mysteries, there is either the mystery where the amateur sleuth stumbles across the body by the end of the first chapter, or you stumble across the body kind of 50 or 60 pages in after you've got a little bit of time to know the victim. So which kind of cozy writer are you, or do y'all do both in your books? Let's start with you, Dean.
Well, I'm definitely one of those, you get to know the victim before they get killed, because, I've never yet come up with a scenario in which I was able to put the body on the first page. And I know there are readers who prefer it that way, but I like to have a little time to develop the character of the victim. So, you can find out, because I generally like to have really unpleasant people as the victim. Yeah. And so, that's one reason. But to me, starting with the body on the first page is like starting in the middle of the story, to me, and there may become a time, and actually in the book I'm writing now, which is going to be called What the Cat Dragged In, the body, such as it is in the first chapter. It's in the attic of an old house. It's actually bones. So this is probably the first time I've ever done that, I think, in 31 books so far. But like I said, I'd like to build up to it and not just start right away with that. It's more of a thing, I think, to start immediately with the dead body.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm so in love with you now, even more, Dean, because I really struggle with trying to get my bodies earlier in the book, and I know that can be sometimes for me an issue, because I think mine are even later in the book, and I try so hard at least to set some kind of mystery up, even if they don't actually find the body. But like you, I'm exactly the same. I have to get all the characters, on the stage. And just so that I think it gives you more of an idea about perhaps like red herrings, or it has opportunities to do misdirection. And that's how I work like that too. And I don't think I've ever had a body on the first page, actually. So I feel better now that you do the same thing.
Good.
I do try. It's just like, oh my God, it's not till page 90. And I'm going, I know, I can't help it. I'm so sorry.
Well, usually mine don't pop up until around page 100. So.
Yeah, me too. Mine about the same.
So, and I've tried to make it earlier, but building the story and the characters, and it's just not right to suddenly kill somebody just for the sake of it. I
sometimes find, and I'm not sure if you do the same, it's almost like the actual body part is not really part of what I'm writing about. I'm more writing about the characters and how they're put in this position and what they do, even though I know you have to obviously pay it off. But that part interests me much more, about how people react when they're faced with those kind of choices.
Well, I think that's exactly it. I agree with you completely. It's the people around the person.
Yes, the people around, yeah.
Yeah, how they react to that person, and the effect that that person has had on their lives, and
yeah, exactly.
done to push them to the point where the only solution they can come up with is to kill him or her. And
exactly. Like, what was it that made them cross to the dark side? What part in their life made them do that? Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, and I don't usually know that until I get there.
Yeah, I know, and I often have changed the killer at the very, the last.
Exactly.
Go all the way back through. Yeah.
Exactly. Same here.
So that means
we're twins, Hannah.
we are. This is great. This is fantastic.
Yes. So that answers the plotter or pantser part. I mean, I know a lot more about Dean's writing process than I know about Hannah's. So you guys kind of are figuring it out as you're writing?
Me.
I think, sorry, you go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, I was just, my short answer, yes, that's exactly me.
Oh. I definitely know and plot my first third of my book. So I'm sort of like setting up what has to happen. And I know the ending roughly. And then it's a free fall. And actually, even as I'm talking about this, I feel a bit ill because I get this anxiety because I never know whether I'm going to be able to pull it off each time. It's horrible. And then when it does work out, it's like, oh, of course, I don't know why I was worrying about that, but it's just that in between stage, which is really quite scary, I think. That's why they invented wine. That's why wine was invented.
In my case, Diet Coke, I think.
Oh, you're so good.
Years ago, I used to do interviews with writers for Mystery Scene magazine in its first incarnation. And I had a set questions that I would ask each of the writers. And one of the things I always asked them was, what is the hardest part of the book for you to write? The beginning, the middle, or the end? And the answers varied. But what I found so astonishing, I mean, Laurie King was one of the people I interviewed, and I admire her tremendously. She's an amazing writer, such brilliant books. And she confessed in the interview, she says, there's always a point in every book where I think this is absolute garbage. What was I thinking? I mean, how did I manage to finish a book before? This is just horrible.
Horrible.
Well, if that happens to Laurie King, then I'm not so bad after all. And I go through that. I mean, I'm writing the 32nd book published, and I feel the same way every time. It's like, how am I ever going to get this done and figure it out? And then somehow it does, and I send it off, and I think, oh, my editor Michelle is going to email and say, Dean, I'm so sorry. What were you thinking?
Oh, I know.
It's never happened, so I'm knock on wood that it's not going to happen this time either. So.
Well, at least you don't get your mom that goes. My mom goes, oh, is it worth it, darling? Is it worth it to have all this pain? And I'm going, of course it's worth it. So I don't know what's going on there with me. Yeah.
Well, I think writers who really, take the work seriously go through these things. It's to sit down and write 5 pages a day and then turn it in and never let it get edited. Those are the ones, I don't trust.
Yeah, so that makes me feel better.
Yeah. So how long generally, kind of from start to finish, does it take you guys to finish a book?
I'm actually a bit weird because I've always written down my hours. I've kept my hours of how long it takes me to write right from the very, very, very beginning, because I was curious to know from the actual inception of the idea right through to the proofreading stage about how many hours. And each book has been around the same. It's between about 800 and 1,000 hours. So I don't know how that computes to months. But I do know that when I'm sort of stuck on a book and I work out when my deadline is and I count back and I think, oh, I know it's not possible. I don't have that many hours to do that. But it has, weirdly enough, been around that time, which is kind of strange. I don't know why. So.
Well, 1,000 hours is almost 42 days.
Oh, that's if you're working around the clock though, right?
Right, exactly. But that's how much it comes out of us. For me, it's so variable. I don't keep track, and sometimes I write a whole bunch in a rush, and other times it's strung out. The fastest I've ever written a book was 3 weeks.
Oh my God, 3 weeks!
But that's because, I was much younger then, for one thing, and I had more physical stamina than I do now. Not so many aches and pains, but that was a book that I had really kind of thought through.
Ah, okay.
It was fairly clear in my mind, because that doesn't happen often, especially these days with all the different medications I have to take for various things. But it was just so much clearer in my mind, and I couldn't write the book fast enough.
Wow, that's so
You know,
good.
and I still think, I mean, it's one of my favorites because it's the one that was the closest I think I've ever come to exactly what I wanted.
Which one was that?
Which one was that? Yeah, I just
It was Best Served Cold. It was the third book in the Trailer Park series.
Oh.
And I really liked the way that one turned out. I mean, if I read it now, I might be embarrassed, but
Yeah.
I was very pleased with it. But, you know, it's strange because my process is so weird, you know, and to be honest, I've had trouble writing the last few months because of all the weirdness and everything. And
I've known there's so many that say that though.
Yeah.
I don't know of any author or writer that's not had that issue, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think everyone's this whole sense of weird limbo land we're in.
Yeah. Well, and every once in a while, the hardest part of the book for me is usually the first 100 pages or so. And sometimes psych myself out saying, oh, you can't do this. And the task I had set up for the book that I'm writing now was a little ambitious, and it would have been fine if all of this hadn't happened and all this civil unrest and everything, because it was going to revolve around racism.
Oh.
It happened in the past, like in Mississippi in the 60s. And I decided, no, I can't tackle that at this time. You know, there's too much going on.
Yeah.
So I rethink the book somewhat. And so I had to sort of restart the process, and that's slowed me down a bit. But, you know, things are beginning to come to me, bits and pieces of the story here and there, you know, just sort of, okay, yeah, this is what's going to happen, and so forth and so on, you know, so I can't give you an actual time.
Keith Kayla is watching, and he has a question. He says, are you ever surprised by what happens in the last act of the book? He says Joan Hess used to call and say her book would be late because the killer turned out to be someone different than she originally thought it would be.
I love that. I didn't know that Joan Hess had said that, but that's absolutely what's just happened to me. The killer was completely the wrong person. And I realized that. So it's like I actually had to rewrite the whole book because of it. So, and that's quite scary, because you have to trust that even though it's a character, it's not a real person, you know, that the character's telling you, and it completely changed the book, and it definitely was better. So yeah, I've had to do that. I think I've done that twice.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me too. I mean, most notably in the very first vampire book, John, which Hosted to Death, which you read. Mm-hmm. The killer, I had planned all along. I knew who the killer was going to be and why and everything. And I got to the end, and it just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And then I realized all along, subconsciously, my subconscious knew who the killer was. Mm-hmm. And I really had to tweak very little going back. Mm-hmm. And because this one character was so unpleasant. And my readers, my friends who read the book before, you know, I sent it off, said, you know, why is this character so nasty to Simon? And then it dawned on me, aha, that's why. You know, right. And luckily, I really didn't have to rewrite that much. A couple of other books, I've had to go back and neaten up things and, you know, change clues around and things. But usually I will have a good idea about who the killer's going to be, but sometimes I'm wrong.
Mm.
And
funny.
You know, and what I tell people is, if you know, it's not fun for me to figure these things out, then it's not going to be fun for you to try either.
Yep.
You know,
so as readers, if you guys are just reading, do you read mysteries? I already know Dean's answer to this. So do you read mysteries, and when you're reading them, are you the type of person who is trying to figure it out as you go with the detective, or are you the type of person who just wants to be surprised when it's revealed who the killer is? Let's go with
I've read thousands of them, and I don't read as many as I used to, but for the most part, I don't really try to figure them out. I let things build in my head, and I think, oh, okay, this is who this is going to be. Like, you know, John just mentioned Diane Freeman, and in the third book, I was convinced I knew exactly what was going on and who the killer was and why. And no, I was wrong. you know, and if I do figure it out and if it's too easy, then I get a little annoyed because I think if I could figure it out,
Yeah.
you know, because since I don't even try, then it must be kind of sloppy.
Yeah,
How about you?
I do find it quite hard. When I'm writing, when I'm really writing, I can't read anything except for non-fiction or biographies, something that's not remotely, it engages that side of my brain. But when I do read mysteries, like I'm just like Dean, I want to be surprised, but there is still that sort of like editing side of my mind thinking, oh, I don't know if I would have done that, or I know why they put that clue in, you know.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, in a funny kind of way, it sort of spoils it a little bit, because I think of things so too much, I think, instead of being able to completely escape and lose myself in a book now. So I
Well,
find
I think it makes us, you know, we're more apt to recognize buried clues, I think.
yeah, exactly.
Sometimes because of how we do our things.
Mm,
And I've certainly become much more critical
me too.
reader than I used to be. And that's one reason why I sort of escape into golden age mysteries.
Yeah, exactly.
I know exactly what I'm going to get.
Mhm.
And, you know, in some of them, the writing is really, really good and the characters are good. Others, you know, they're just more perfunctory, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's an entertaining story and there's a puzzle and that's fine. That's all I need.
I've also escaped a lot in the 1960s as well, like MMK, Mary Stuart, that kind of era a little bit, and I've quite enjoyed that. They're all very dated, although and the writing's very different as well. But I've actually liked that, so I'm able to sort of go along that into that kind of world when I'm writing, as opposed to contemporary of what I'm what I'm writing.
Well, I adore MMK, and I also love Mary Stuart. And I think actually Stuart's heroines are a little more modern than
yeah, you're right, they are.
They're really strong women, like the girl Linda in Nine Coaches Waiting, who saves the world.
Yes.
And if you go back, I read this is digressing, but my brother Michael is one of my favorites.
Oh, and I love my brother Michael. Yeah, exactly.
There's that horrifying scene in the cave where the heroine's hiding. And the first time I read that, it went right over my head because I was about 16. And I read that later as an adult, and I'm thinking, oh my Lord, I can't believe she did this. I mean, it's really a horrifying scene. You know, so she's kind of ahead of people. You know, but my ultimate escape is Georgette Hare.
Oh gosh, yes.
I'm listening to them on audio in the car, and I'm now sort of going on my second way through. And they're just wonderful because you get so wrapped up in that world. You can be critical of it too, but at the same time, it's a whole nother world you can escape into and forget about everything.
Yeah, I also love that. I think I must have, because I think I was around the same as you at that time, because I found my list of books that I read that I read in my teens, and Georgette Hare was on there, and Mary Stuart and all that. I thought it was interesting because you're right. Back then, my interpretation of it was quite different than it was as an adult. And so rediscovering those, I'm really enjoying them so much more than I did even then.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. We've seen, Dean mentioned kind of one of the things he loved about working at the bookstore is being able to connect with people and share books. And that's one of the things that we're missing because at the moment the store is still closed for people to come in, which we're hoping soon we're going to open up for appointments. We're starting to talk about what that'll look like. But one of the things that we've seen people turn to is kind of the classic golden age mystery stuff. There was a period of 2 weeks where we had customers clear out almost every Agatha Christie that was on the shelf for us, because just as with everything that's going on, it's been really comforting for people to kind of go back to those, that there's going to be a sense of closure when the mystery is over.
Exactly. I agree.
Justice is going to be done. So it was really nice to kind of see people kind of turn to those classics, just because you knew what you were going to get when you picked up that book, and you could just escape into that world.
Yeah, John, you weren't at the store for 9/11, but one of the things that we saw after 9/11 was that all the big thrillers that came out that fall tanked big time.
That's interesting.
Because people didn't want to read that stuff. What did we sell? The cozier stuff, the stuff that was not as scary. That's one reason a lot of this stuff is our contemporary world, even before COVID, was a pretty terrifying place, and people want comfort.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It's been really nice to see. We've seen in the last couple of years that the cozy readership has gotten younger and younger, and that the people, like you said, they just want to come in and escape. So it's been really nice to be able to kind of turn a whole new group of readers on to cozy mysteries. So we had a couple questions from the crowd. Jennifer wants to know what advice you guys would have to people who are just starting out getting as authors and writing.
Read as much as possible. I think readers, you absorb so much from writing. I mean, I never really have taken a formal writing class since creative writing in high school, but I've read so many books. I think, you absorb the structure books, and that's why I tend to write sort of like Agatha Christie and some of the Golden Age writers. My structure is very like that. And, read and learn to tell what's good and what's bad and what works and what doesn't.
I think also I think watching certain films and movies, you can actually start to learn the structure of something, which you'll have to use in your writing, and that sometimes is helpful. If there's pick a movie that's one of your favorites. It could be a comedy even. It doesn't have to be a mystery or anything, and then just see how, if you break it down, you'll see how the writer has actually got your plot points, and the part where it all turns and the part where boy loses the girl and all that kind of thing. So you're just sort of like being able to understand how the story structure is. So I think with what Dean says about reading as much is good, but I also think watching as much of your favorite films that you know off by heart that you can study would be that. And then
I was going to say, write what you enjoy reading.
Yes, definitely.
If you love paranormal fantasy, try to write a military thriller just because you think it will sell. Write from your heart, whatever means something to you. Don't try to follow a trend or, you have to keep an eye to the market, but, if you have a passion for it, you put much more into it than you would if you just try to write something for a market.
Yeah, otherwise it's not authentic. You have to, exactly. And whoever reads it will know that it's come from a different place. It's not coming from your heart. And I think the other thing too is that I see so many people start something and then they never finish it. And it's very hard to get to the end of a first draft, especially when you're not sure what you're writing. But the biggest thing you can do is to get to the end of the first draft, so that you put the end, even if it's only 50,000 words or something. Because for me, I write about 5 drafts normally before I send it off to my editor. And definitely the first draft, I probably change about 80% of that. So as long as you're always thinking that it's not even about the first draft that's going to be perfect in any way. And I think Anne Lamott said the shitty first drafts, from Bird by Bird. I think that's a really good book to pick up. And it's just, so just to know that you're basically rewriting all the time, wouldn't you say, Dean?
Yes. It's easier to revise something you've written.
Yes.
To, keep, have nothing to revise, get the first draft done.
Yeah.
So we had another question from the crowd about titles. Can you guys talk a little bit about how you came up with the titles for the books? Let's start with you this time, Hannah.
I'm only laughing because I actually don't choose my titles, and they usually say something like, Island Sisters 1, Island Sisters 2. But I have to throw out some suggestions, where normally I'll have picked some phrases that are in the book, and then it goes and the marketing people pick the title. So I struggle with titles a lot, and I know, but I also know that there are, I think it's Carolyn Hart actually, who we all love. If she doesn't have a title, then she can't even start writing her book. So she actually starts with her title and then writes the book, whereas I don't know my title at all until really far along the process. So it's the disappointing.
I'm like Carolyn. I like to know my title before I get going, because I want it to be there's some kind of connection between the title and what happens in the book. And in my case, with the Cat in the Stacks books, I've come up with a number of the titles, like Careless Whiskers was mine, Awful Truth, Six Cats A-Slaying, The Silence of the Library, and Arsenic and Old Books, and No Cats Allowed. I came up with all of those. But a lot of the others, the marketing department came up with things. I came up with the one for the current book I'm working on, What the Cat Dragged In.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and with the sisters books, I came up with all 4 of those because they were all kind of variations on a Southern saying, But I do like to know what the title is, because it can, for me, it can influence the plot. Like in the very first sisters book, Bless Her Dead Little Heart. Well, the murder victim was a woman.
Yeah.
And there is kind of, once you read the book, you understand the significance of her dead little heart.
Right.
Because the murder victim is just really, has no heart for anybody but herself, kind of thing.
Oh, I like that.
So that, for me, I really would need to know what the book is going to be called before I can really launch myself into it. I want to know, what it's going to be.
Maybe I should start doing that, actually. Maybe it'll make me write quicker. I don't know.
It doesn't make me work any quicker.
So you mentioned that you got to go visit the Biltmore. Hannah, did you get to go visit the islands?
I did. It was the most amazing trip. Yes. And I went with my sister, and in the real world, going to the Scilly Isles, there's this most horrible ferry called the Great White Stomach Pump. For obvious reasons, everyone's always ill on it because it's a flat bottomed boat. There is no stabilizers, and the ferry from Penzance in Cornwall, because it's off the southwest coast, it's 2 3/4 hours on the ferry. It's far, and most people are ill. I saw a dog throwing up on there. It was just horrible. And I think it was one of the worst times was that it was extremely rough. The boat took 4 hours to get to St. Mary's, which is on the Scilly Isles. They couldn't dock, and so they had to turn around and go all the way back again. And there were ambulances waiting. And so I did experience that, and it's just exactly like that. I mean, not everybody gets seasick, I know. So I went out on one boat, and then I came back on a helicopter because there was a helicopter service, which was more expensive, but I couldn't go and do the boat. To answer your question, yes, I saw what it was like to get to these islands. So, yeah.
That's an important detail.
Yeah. One of the things I think is interesting, kind of we've been talking a lot about Golden Age mysteries. I don't think that the Golden Age mystery authors kind of wrote series in the way that we think of series today, where there was kind of an overarching plot. It was basically like each book was just a standalone that happened to have kind of some of the same characters and same detectives in it. So as you guys are writing your series now, how do you balance trying to catch readers up with what they might need to know about the characters versus just being able to let them just kind of jump in without having read any of the others?
Well, I try to write each one in a sense as a standalone, but there are definite character arcs, with in his family, but I try not to give away something that might be, kind of a significant subplot point in a previous book or something. But it's hopefully if they pick up a later one, they can follow the story just fine, but it might make them want to go back and read the early ones. One thing about Golden Age, so I will say Dorothy Sayers and Marjorie Allingham both, their characters did grow and change. Lord Peter and Campion did grow and change which is totally unlike, Miss Marple and Poirot stayed the same. But
they did.
Managed to, more like what contemporary series do. But I liken writing a series these days almost in a sense to writing a soap opera, because readers, once they get hooked on your characters, they become friends and they want to see, okay, what's Charlie up to now? Is he ever going to propose to Helen Louise?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I do the same. I do the same thing, and I know that in the second book of the Island Sisters, which won't be out till next year, I had touched a lot on what had happened in the first to try and for readers who didn't read the first, and my editor, she said, you know, it's too heavy, it's just too heavy because it slows the book down. So it's quite difficult to sprinkle in the details so that the details are in there without having to do a lot of backstory. So I do find that quite tricky. And I definitely, like, you know, Dean was saying, have an overarch of the whole series of where I see it will go at the end, I think. Yeah.
I have been joined by, so Juliet has now.
Oh, there she. Oh, she's such a pretty cat. Oh, I had a calico cat, but her markings are much more like bigger, because mine was very mottled, but hers are very defined, aren't they? They're very, very refined and beautiful. Yeah.
Down here trying to chew on my fingers as we're chatting. So Chris has asked, do either of you submit short stories to literary journals at all, or do you guys do short stories at all?
I have in the past, but it's usually when I've been asked to contribute one to an anthology. I haven't just written a story and submitted. I would love to be published in Ellery Queen or Alfred Hitchcock, but short stories are harder for me than novels because, you know, short stories are just, a mystery short story to work properly has to be very tightly constructed. You know, I mean, Agatha Christie was a mistress of the short story. I mean, it's actually brilliantly constructed story. And Ruth Rendell is another writer. But no.
No, I have to admit, I haven't done that. I mean, I really struggle writing a tweet, you know, because it's only like 146 characters or something. And so for me to tackle a short story, which I would love to do, and every time I see that you know, there's someone calling for an anthology at entries, I write it in my calendar and I think, right, I'm going to spend the whole of August writing a short story. And it's very, very difficult. Just like Dean says, for me, it's very difficult to write that.
I will say, writing short stories, that is one thing that I plan, because I've published about 15 or so, I guess now, in various anthologies, and that's one thing I do. I basically plot the whole thing in my head before I start writing, because I want to know the things. And then sometimes when you're actually writing it, things might change a little bit, but you know, but those require much more careful thinking, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of plot.
So before we wrap up this afternoon, I know you guys just both have either a book that has just come out or a book that comes out in a couple of days. Do you guys want to tell us what you have coming up next?
Sure. I have after this book, I've got another Honeychurch Hall coming out in September in the States, but it's already come out in the UK. So that's called Tidings of Death at Honeychurch Hall. That's coming out in September. And then the 7th book in that series, Diva of Death at Honeychurch Hall, there's a theme with the Honeychurch Hall, comes out in November. So I have a couple. And then the next book will be The Danger at the Cove, which is the next Island Sisters mystery. But in between, I'm hoping I can write a short story, just like I said, and it is August, but I don't have that much longer in August, but I am going to try and do it. So.
Well, you're writing at quite a pace. I'm working on What the Cat Dragged In, and theoretically it's scheduled for April, but it may get pushed back a little bit. We'll see, as things tend to be with me. In high school, I was always so careful. I always turn things in on time, if not early, and the older I get, the less that happens. So shall we see?
I'm always extending my deadlines, honestly, and so it's done when it's sort of done, kind of thing. But I know that when we're working to a contract, we don't have that luxury.
But life intervenes. Things are just unpredictable. So
yeah, exactly.
So if you guys joined us late, we've been talking with Miranda James, whose new book, Cat Me If You Can, comes out next Tuesday. We will have some signed copies available. We don't have a ton. So if you want one, definitely get your order in. And we've been talking with Hannah Dennison, whose new book, Death at High Tide, just came out last week. I highly recommend both of them. Please pick them up. The store is, at the moment, we're closed for browsing, but we're definitely doing curbside pickup and mail order. So you can visit us at murderbooks.com or give us a call at 713-524-8597, and we'll happily get these books to you. I also wanted to mention, if you are cozy mystery fans, we've got a couple of upcoming events. Next Wednesday, August 26th, I'm going to be chatting with Victoria Laurie about her new book, and Juliet Blackwell. On September 1st, I'm going to be talking with Alyssa Maxwell and Diane Freeman. And we just got Marty Wingate and Jen McKinley set up for October 7th. And we're working on something with Vivian Chen and Ellen Byron, hopefully early in September. So definitely check out the Murdered by the Book website, murderbooks.com, for more info on that. If you missed the first half of our chat this afternoon, Facebook will archive it when we're done, so you'll be able to watch it there. We'll also be uploading it to our YouTube channel, where you can see any of the other author chats we've done. We did one with Dean moderated a talk with Carolyn Haynes and S.C. Perkins last month, so that's definitely one that you want to check out too. Hannah and Dean, thank you so much for chatting with me this afternoon. Yeah, I'm so sorry we weren't able to do it in the store, but I'm glad that we at least got to hang out and chat this way.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. Okay, it's really nice. Okay. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Bye. Bye.